Okay, let's really dig into this. Think about it. You spend your whole life working, right? Building something, pouring your energy into it.
Yeah, creating value, your life's work.
Exactly. And then you need to store that value, that economic energy. The main tool we have, currency. Well, history shows it's kind of a leaky battery.
Leaky is putting it mildly sometimes. Currencies collapse. It happens. The source mentioned, what, every 30, 40 years on average?
Right, and even the supposed gold standard, the US dollar, which dominated the last century, lost, what was it, 99.9% of its value in 100 years? That's
It
staggering.
really is. So the big question becomes, how do you protect what you've earned when the container itself seems designed to fail over time?
That's the knot we're trying to untangle today, and it's the central theme in the source material. We've been looking at these fascinating excerpts from a conversation with Michael Saylor.
Ah, Saylor. Most people know him now as a huge Bitcoin guy, but
Mm.
his journey there is, well, it wasn't straightforward.
Not at all. He was a successful software CEO for decades, right? MicroStrategy, then hit this wall, this period of real frustration.
Yeah, a major business plateau. And that experience, that crisis almost, is what sent him on this intense search for a better way to store value, which, as we know, led him to Bitcoin.
And what I find really compelling is how his background shaped that search. It wasn't just spreadsheets and finance. It was engineering, fantasy novels, history.
Definitely. An unusual mix. Engineering rigor from MIT, but also this deep dive into science fiction and fantasy, plus a solid grounding in history and how big ideas change things.
So our mission here is to unpack that journey, understand why someone with that specific mental toolkit saw Bitcoin as the answer or an answer to this age-old problem. And we want to break down his thinking, use his examples. There's a key analogy and metaphor we'll get into to make it all, make sense.
It's about how he synthesized all these different ways of thinking. Physical systems, political systems, economic ones, even these imagined fantasy worlds, into a framework for looking at money.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning. How did that unique perspective form? His early life seems key, moving around constantly.
Yeah, being an Air Force kid, seeing different places, different perspectives, and his parents were huge influences. His mom apparently had this incredible belief in him, like he was destined for something big.
The Dayton Paperboy competition story.
Exactly, winning, stuff like that. And his dad, the career Air Force NCO, instilled that discipline, that work ethic, hit the ground running. So you get this blend of high expectation and intense drive.
And reading. You mentioned reading was huge for him.
Foundational, seriously. Started early with reading contests, got hooked on science fiction, Heinlein, Asimov, Clarke, but also fantasy. Dungeons and Dragons was big.
Interesting. Sci-fi and fantasy, they feel different.
They are. He saw sci-fi as exploring what's possible within physics, engineering-based futures. Fantasy, though, that's about imagining things into existence, almost like magic. He felt both trained his mind to think outside the box, break existing frames.
And then he goes to MIT, not exactly known for D&D clubs, I imagine.
Probably not. But he studied astronautics, hard engineering, complex systems, but also system dynamics.
System dynamics, what's that exactly?
It's basically using computer simulations to model complex human behavior, economic systems. Think nonlinear stuff, feedback loops.
Like his example about traffic. Build a bigger highway.
And it just attracts more cars until the commute time is the same again.
Exactly.
Or like the Club of Rome predicting resource doom, but missing that humans innovate and find new resources. Simple cause and effect doesn't work in these complex adaptive systems.
And he also studied the history of science.
Yep. Understanding paradigm shifts, how ideas like, the Earth going around the sun, or relativity, or railroads, electricity, how they don't just improve the old way, they completely rewrite the rules.
You put it all together. Engineering, systems thinking, imaginative leaps from fantasy, historical context.
And you get what he calls a synthesist, someone who can think across these different layers, the physical world, politics, economics, even the world of ideas and imagination.
You can almost see it in his early stuff, even before MicroStrategy got big. Buying domain names.
Totally. Hope.com, voice.com. He called it the digital real estate gold rush. He saw these words, these names, as powerful assets in this new digital space. Almost like that fantasy idea, know the demon's name, have power over it. He was grabbing the core digital names.
Okay, so fast forward. He builds MicroStrategy for, 30 years? Successful business intelligence company?
Very successful initially.
Yeah.
But then came this expansionary era where he tried launching like 10 other businesses at once.
Which didn't go so well, apparently.
No, mostly whiffed, as he put it. Couple small wins, but mostly failures. That forced a retreat, refocusing on the core business around 2010.
And the decade after that sounds rough.
Deeply frustrating. 2010 to 2020, MicroStrategy became a zombie company, his words. Profitable, sure, but barely growing. 1, 2, maybe 4% a year.
Stuck.
Totally stuck. He felt like David against these digital Goliaths, Microsoft, the big tech players,
Right.
pouring money into R&D, sales, marketing, flying everywhere. Huge effort.
But not moving the needle against the giants.
Couldn't make a dent. They could push a feature to 1 billion users instantly. His hard work just wasn't translating into growth.
And the crazy part is, while his company was grinding, his personal investments were taking off.
Yeah, that's the really stark contrast. Based on his book, The Mobile Wave, predicting software moving to phones, digital monopolies, he invests his own money, like $25 million into Apple, Amazon, those kinds of companies.
And the return.
He says maybe an hour a month of effort made $500 million. It's almost perverse, right? His life's work at the company yields tiny growth, while picking the right digital network assets explodes his wealth.
That must mess with your head, seeing where the value was actually accruing. And then, March 2020 hits.
The catalyst: COVID, lockdowns, mandatory remote work. Suddenly, his company's location wasn't an advantage anymore.
And bigger companies could poach his staff easier.
Exactly. Mega companies could just offer more money for someone to work remotely, connecting to their servers. The talent pool became global and much more competitive overnight.
Plus, they had this huge pile of cash, $500 million.
Right. And that cash, which used to earn decent interest, became a huge problem. Because over the previous decade, he says, central banks had just hammered down interest rates.
Through printing money, manipulating rates.
That's his perspective. He admits he didn't fully get money or banking back then. He just saw the rates going down. Only later did he see it as value being siphoned off out the back door through inflation.
And the final nail in the coffin for that cash.
Jerome Powell, March 2020, responding to the COVID panic, drops rates to 0. Boom.
Suddenly, that $500 million isn't just earning little, it's earning nothing.
A non-performing asset. Worse than nothing, because inflation was still eating away at its purchasing power, especially as other assets started inflating like crazy.
Which leads to his observation about the bifurcation, Main Street versus Wall Street.
A really critical point in the source. He saw Main Street small businesses, people working with their hands, getting absolutely destroyed by lockdowns. Can't open your shop, can't go to work. Illegal, basically.
While Wall Street
Was having a party. 0% interest rates just blew up financial asset prices. Stocks, real estate, hyperinflation, he calls it in that context.
Like his examples, an empty building doubling in value. A company with bankrupt customers sees its stock soar.
Yeah. The image he paints is stark. The investment manager chilling in the Hamptons having a career year while businesses are boarded up. It highlighted a deep disconnect, a fragility.
So Saylor's cornered. Cash earning 0, business plateaued, losing staff. He saw 2 paths.
Yeah, fast death or slow death. Fast death, give the cash back to shareholders, let them gamble on inflated assets. Slow death, sit on the zero-interest cash, watch it erode, and lose his best people.
But he didn't choose either.
Nope. He felt like, I wasn't put on earth to lose like this. That crisis moment, this war on currency, combined with the war on COVID, as he terms it, it forced a complete paradigm shift. He had to find somewhere safe to put that economic energy, something liquid, transportable, that would hold value indefinitely.
The search began. What did he look at first? The usual suspects.
Pretty much. Real estate, stocks already look way too expensive because of the 0 rates. Art, not really practical for $500 million.
Okay, what about gold, the classic safe haven?
He considered it,
Yeah.
called it the best idea in the 19th century. But he saw a flaw for the modern era. Supply inflation. Meaning? Miners keep digging up more gold, right? About 2% more gets added to the total supply every year, according to his figures. Doesn't sound like much, but
It compounds.
exactly. Over 36 years, that 2% annual increase means the total gold supply roughly doubles. So your chunk of gold represents half the share of the total pie compared to 36 years earlier. It leaks value relative to its own supply over long periods, not perfect money.
So not a perfectly closed system,
Wow.
which leads him to the big question, the analogy, really. What if someone designed digital gold?
Yes, thinking like an engineer again. Can we use technology to create something like gold, but better, with perfect scarcity?
And he uses this divine bank idea to sketch out the ideal properties, very fantasy-influenced.
It's a great thought experiment. If God made money, what would it be like? Impossible to make more than the fixed amount, like 21 million Bitcoin. Weightless. Instantly teleportable. Infinitely divisible.
A perfect ledger that can't be cheated.
God would never cheat you. Lasts forever, runs for free. All these ideal properties.
Well, why trust this system?
Because, as the source lays out his thinking, you can't trust governments or banks or even people indefinitely. So the solution has to be decentralized, a network nobody controls, run by code and math.
This is miles away from his 2013 comments, right? When he called Bitcoin a scam coin.
Totally different tune. The 2020 crisis changed everything. When you're desperate, you reevaluate. It's like if you get a terrible diagnosis, you'll try experimental cures you ignored before. The crisis forced him to look again, but this time with urgency and that engineering mindset.
Cue the rabbit hole.
Oh yeah, deep dive. Speed watching, hundreds of hours of podcasts like this one maybe, reading the Bitcoin Standard, talking to developers, really trying to understand the system from the inside out.
Seeing it less as magic internet money and more as
an engineered solution based on math, science, consistency, truth, incorruptibility. All things that resonate with an engineering background. He even compared the gold to an adiabatic system, a closed system where energy isn't lost, unlike leaky fiat currencies.
But how do you build a perfect system from imperfect parts? People make mistakes, computers fail.
Right, and that brings us to the other great analogy, John Harrison and the longitude problem.
The clockmaker.
The clockmaker. He needed a super accurate clock for ships, but metals expand and contract with temperature, they're imperfect. He couldn't change the metal, so he engineered a system using different metals that counteracted each other's flaws. A perfect clock from imperfect parts.
So Bitcoin is like that clock, using imperfect nodes, computers, people.
But orchestrating them through the protocol, the mining, the validation, so the system becomes incredibly fault-tolerant and reliable. Nuclear hardened, he calls it. If parts fail, the network doesn't care. It keeps running.
And that leads to the metaphor, Bitcoin as a virus.
Yeah, a monetary virus, an ideological virus, not negatively, but meaning it spreads because people choose to adopt it. They run the node, they buy in because they're persuaded by the idea, the ideology behind it.
Which is, what's the core ideology?
Sovereignty, being in control of your own value. Truth based on math, not decrees. Thermodynamic soundness like energy conservation, 1 + 1 = 2. Incorruptibility. It connects to libertarian ideas, Austrian economics, natural law rules based on physics, not politics.
So all roads lead back to the start, how to store the value of your work.
Precisely. For Saylor, Bitcoin emerges as this engineered system designed specifically to preserve the fruits of your labor, your economic energy, over long stretches of time, minimizing the leakage from parasitism and corruption. It's about natural justice for value preservation.
Okay, let's pull this together. We followed Saylor from his unique background through the business grind and the 2020 crisis to his discovery of Bitcoin as a potential solution.
A solution aimed squarely at that historical problem. Currencies fail, they get inflated away. Bitcoin offers engineered scarcity, a decentralized structure as a counterpoint.
And for you listening, why does this matter? Why wade through all this engineering and history?
Because everyone listening works to create value. And Saylor's argument, based on this source, is that the default method for storing a cash, traditional banking, is fundamentally broken or breaking. Understanding why someone like him landed on Bitcoin offers a totally different lens for thinking about how you protect your own life's energy long term.
And here's a final thought to chew on. The source points out something interesting about big shifts like this. New ideas often take hold slowly, maybe only with the next generation, unless
there's a crisis, a war, as Saylor put it, something that forces people to change fast.
He saw the war on currency and the COVID crisis as that catalyst for himself. So the provocative question is, if he's right about that war, what does it mean for how fast this shift might actually happen? And how do you navigate living between the old system and potentially this new one for storing value in the years ahead?
It's definitely something to think about, the pace of change and how to position yourself when the ground rules seem to be shifting. The source definitely gives you food for thought there.
Absolutely. Well, that brings us to the end of this deep dive. We hope you found it useful. If you did, please follow the show, give it a like, share it around, and definitely follow What Bitcoin Taught Me on Twitter, X, Nostr, Bluesky, Threads, Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Thanks for tuning in.